questions that you'd like to pose. If you do have any questions, make sure you use the chat feature and send it over to us, and then I will respond as soon as we get them. So I may answer your question right away, or it may be a question that I save until the end of the session. I don't think this one's going to be really long, so we can go ahead and get started right away. One of the things that I wanted to remind everyone about, I think a lot of you are doing a good job with this, but I do think there's some opportunity for you to take a look at it, is ensuring that you're attaching a signed contract as part of the procurement file within BidBuy. So we all know BidBuy is the procurement file. It's where all the important documentation should be and everything that's required to be maintained. But it's very easy as you're getting down to the end of a procurement to not come back and attach that signed contract. So when you're utilizing an executed contract, it's required to be included in the procurement file, so ensure that it is. In addition to just reminding all of the staff that you work with, at this time, at this point in your BidBuy life, it might not be a bad idea to go back and take a look at everything that you've done, just maybe a quick spot check, because that would be you know, an easy audit finding if you do not have your attached signed contract as part of the procurement file. So just a reminder to make sure that you're doing that and maybe take a look back and make sure that all the ones that should be there are there. There was an update to the appendix and some various discussion about it, and so I just wanted to bring this to everyone's attention. And this was the action guidance. This is the overall guidance that says who does what when, and you know, there's a note at the bottom that says this document provides standard guidance. So the very bottom note down there says this document provides standard guidance, but agencies may use more restrictive guidance. And so this is just kind of a general kind of question and answer document that gives you the basic direction. After this was updated, there were some questions about sending the purchase order, and we had it listed here that the SPO was sending the purchase order. And it was brought to our attention that in many cases, the SPO does not send the purchase order. It's not part of the standard practice. And so we've left that so that it still reads that the SPO, you know, should be sending it. But when you look at either note below that this is standard guidance and you may do something that's more restrictive, or we've also included this note here that says with SPO agreement, the agency can send the PO. So like I said, just wanted to clarify that because I know that there had been some questions and feedback that came in about that. So just pointing that out, that is something that's an opportunity for you to have a different agreement with the SPO. And some IFB and RFP updates. Wanted to bring this to your attention also, so that some questions had come up about the whole process of CMS delegation. How does that work? How does it occur? What are we supposed to do? And so this information has been updated in the process manuals. And important, I guess, to point out here, you know, we have job aids, and our job aids are really sort of our quick cheat sheet or our quick notes about what you're supposed to do. It's something that you keep, you know, maybe next to you. Once you're very familiar with the process, you understand all the information that's in that process manual, which is our detailed instruction, but you just want a quick kind of guide to get through something, that's what our job aids are for. But the process manuals are really where the detailed information exists. So this has been updated in the process manual, and this talks about two opportunities here for CMS delegation, or two directions that something can go. So if CMS receives a procurement and they decide that the procurement is going to be conducted by the agency, they can also decide that the procurement is going to be conducted by CMS. So that's the two options that CMS, the two paths CMS might go down. And so just if the agency is going to conduct it, CMS will enter on the Notes tab designated to the agency. And then on the Summary tab, when they're approving, they'll indicate that they've done their approval. So at that point, the agency buyer would move forward and continue the procurement. So that's really straightforward. There's not a lot of unique information or instructions there. So that's what occurs if the procurement is going to be conducted by the agency. However, if upon review CMS decides that they are going to conduct this procurement, when CMS receives it, in the Notes tab, CMS is going to enter CMS driven. So that's the process. They enter something in the Notes tab to indicate that this is going to be CMS driven, and then on the Summary tab, they go through and they do their approval. So CMS GLOS will approve it. Once CMS approves something that's going to then be driven by CMS, the agency buyer will go out to the General tab and change the purchaser to the CMS buyer. So now the buyer is accurately reflected on that procurement. And for an agency procurement, if CMS is going to conduct this now on behalf of the agency, the CMS buyer will convert the rec to a bid as appropriate. So at that point, the CMS buyer moves forward with processing it through as it's appropriate. If, however, it's going to become a CMS statewide master, and I don't believe there are a lot of instances where CMS looks at something and says, you know, we're going to conduct this procurement and it is going to be a statewide master, but I think there are some instances where that occurs. If that, in fact, is what's going to occur, the CMS buyer will begin a new rec in the CMS board. So I know that's a lot of information. Hopefully it's something that you're doing kind of on a regular basis. It's fairly routine, but there were some questions, and so I was able to go back and clarify that. Okay. So I do have some comments from a couple of people that they're not able to hear, but I see that I have questions from others that indicate that they are able to hear. So I'm just going to type a note in here that says, you know, participants are able to hear. Okay. And, okay, great. So someone wants to know, is the SPO, this is a question that went back to this portion where we were discussing attaching the executed contract. It says, is the SPO attaching the fully executed contract prior to moving the PO to sent status? So generally, no. I think that in some cases you can have an executed contract prior to sending, but you also may have circumstances where you are attaching that executed contract after sending. So I think it can go either way. But, you know, that's a really good question, but I think it can go either way. And in terms of who is actually attaching that, you indicated in the question, you know, is the SPO attaching? That is a conversation you want to be very clear, whether it is the agency attaching that executed contract, which I believe will be the most common circumstance, but you want to make sure between the SPO and the agency that you're extremely clear in terms of who is taking the responsibility for attaching that executed contract. So I hope that's helpful. Okay, and others can hear me, so we're good. Okay, ICI catalog. Really just wanted to go over that with you very quickly. The ICI catalog is now available in BidBuy as a master contract, and as a result of it being established within BidBuy as a master contract, you're going to work through and order ICI items as you would with any release off of a master contract. So that's good news. It's a very standard process. It's something we're all familiar with doing, is going in and releasing off of a master contract. So the CPO notice, I've provided all of the resources that I think you're going to need when working with ICI here on this screen, so you have easy access, can open this up and go out and access anything you need. The CPO notice is located at this link. The ICI list of items, the product item list, is located at this link. The job aid for an ICI release off of a master contract is here. and the ICI request for waiver is right here. So quite a number of items. If you have not read through the CPO notice yet, please do so. It's, once again, it's another process that's pretty straightforward, really isn't anything all that unique or unusual, and so should be something that you're familiar with doing, now doing it just slightly differently in BidBuy. And as I said, the process, let me move this box probably in your way. I have a couple of questions here before I get into the details over on ICI. Okay. Okay. So I have a question in terms of, I've just been reading through several questions. What is ICI? So ICI is Illinois Correctional Industries, and ICI has a list of items that you are required to purchase through ICI, and that contract is now available. When you're not purchasing something that's on the list from ICI, then you need to obtain a waiver in order to procure it from another source. So hopefully that helps you with what ICI is. So as I said earlier, the process utilizes the release off of master, and you will conduct the release off of master per the job aid. The description, you'll want to include ICI, PPL, the product list information, and what you're procuring. So just like you do a whole lot of other procurements in that description, it helps if you use the identifier so that when you go back and search, or if we are searching for things related to ICI, we can quickly obtain the report and the information that we're looking for. So when you're doing it in the description, put ICI, PPL. And a question that I had was, if I'm doing a release off for ICI items off that ICI master contract, could I release other things too? And the answer to that is absolutely yes. So that's just like doing any kind of a release off master. You can release items off of multiple contracts when working within BidBuy. That's one of the really nice features, and it will create separate purchase orders for each individual vendor or each source that you're using. So you can have ICI items on your release as well as other things on your release. The only thing that's really different about doing the ICI process is that if you are seeking a waiver of the ICI requirement, and this is spelled out in the job aid, but I just wanted to give you kind of the basic steps when you're looking for a waiver. If you're seeking a waiver, you're going to, let me go back. Just when I thought I could do that. Okay, you're going to set a reminder to your SPO to let them know that you're seeking a waiver from the ICI requirements, and the SPO will then communicate by setting a reminder to ICI staff. The ICI staff will respond to that waiver request via a reminder, and then the SPO, based on that information and then their full review of your procurement, will either approve or deny. So that's just sort of the big difference, is what to do on a release off master for ICI when you're seeking a waiver. Okay, so that's the basic information. And someone wanted to know, how long will the waiver process take? I really don't have an answer to that. I do know that, everyone all the SPOs who are working procurements and unique circumstances do their best to get it out. I know ICI has agreed to use this process, so I really can't guess how long the process will take. It's a newer process, so as with any new process, there might be a bump or two along the way. If you've sent something off, when you're doing your procurement and you do want a waiver, you're going to want to take that into consideration, that you're going to be having an extra step in the procurement that you're working on, and so you want to plan for that. And then, as with anything, if you've sent off that request for waiver and you've not gotten a response in a reasonable amount of time, you'll want to reach back out and just, find out where it's at, find out where it might be stopped. So, I don't expect that this is going to add a whole bunch of new time, but, and maybe with any luck, it will actually make the process more efficient, where I see I can quickly go in, look at the request, and get it back. Okay. Any other questions? And it looks like some questions came through. So there's a question about the procurement justification form and who reviews that form now that CMS is removed from the release order approval path. And you know what? I don't know the answer to that, so that's going to be a follow-up question. PJ, let me write this down. Okay, we got that written down. And there's a question about small purchases above $50,000. Isn't PPP to be notified for disclosures? The answer to that is yes. And then someone says, any suggestions on how to speed up the approval process in BidBuy so that we're not having to change the dates to restart the process? Excellent question. And I think the answer to that question is going to be very specific to where you're finding that your approval process is, getting delayed. So if you can provide any information, the real key, I think, to solving any issues that you have about your approval process is understanding where the delays are occurring. In terms of BidBuy itself and the system, you should be receiving your automated notices, and the dashboard should contain directions on what needs to be done and what outstanding items are open for you to approve or disapprove, and you should be able to see where something is in the approval path. So, if you're finding that you're consistently having delays, then identify where that delay is, and then, if there's something that you can bring to our attention that we can work on to expedite, we'd be happy to do that. But the answer to that, it really lies in where the delay is occurring. Okay, and there's that question. Will exempt procurements go in BidBuy? Generally speaking, exempt procurements are not going in BidBuy, so you do not need to put exempt procurements in BidBuy. Okay, I think that catches us up on all the questions, except for the one about procurement justification form. Once again, time to look at your agency readiness, and every agency is in a different state of readiness. So some of you are, working through initial stages, some of you are very far down the path, but just always a reminder, and even for those of you who have been doing this for quite some time, do your business processes, your internal business processes, do they accurately reflect the new environment of BidBuy? Are there areas that, things that you might still be duplicating from your old processes that now occur in BidBuy that you don't need to be doing? So that business process evaluation should always be something that you're taking a look at, kind of on a periodic basis, to ensure that you have the best processes possible. Approval paths, everyone's pretty much well down that path. If you're live in BidBuy, you've got your approval paths established, and I think that's going fairly smoothly. I know that there are some outstanding, some agencies that have outstanding legacy contracts. So if you have questions about outstanding legacy contracts that did not get put into the system prior to our turnover, you'll want to make sure that you reach out to the State User Help Desk with any questions you have about inputting agency contracts. And staff training, always ongoing. We will do train the trainer at least once a year, probably a couple of times a year, but always just as important, to remember that your agency training is an agency level activity, and so it's, you always want to make sure that you have a trainer at your agency who is keeping up and regularly attending these sessions so that they're up to date and can provide staff training. And then, especially now, as we get close to the end of the year, are all your registrations and deactivations up to date in BidBuy? That's super critical. So if you have someone who's no longer responsible, leaving a position, any of those kinds of things, ensure that you have your registrations and deactivations up to date. As you know, most everything, if you have any questions about that, you can reach out to the state user help desk and they can assist you with that in terms of understanding your registrations and who's active and inactive. Okay. Nothing new, which is good on the help desk list. So, but just always good to point out that if you have questions about how your agencies should use BidBuy, that's the state user help desk. If you have questions as an agency about a vendor, something you're doing to try and assist a vendor, or a vendor has a question, that goes to the vendor help desk. And then if there is a question about SAP and BidBuy, then that goes to the ERP contact. So those are all your locations for help. Hopefully that's working well for you. Resources, this is where we keep alternative forms. So alternative forms can always be located there. But alternative, that's the key word. You should not regularly be using alternative forms. If the forms in BidBuy do not work for you, let us know, and we can usually fix that. BEP training, still working on that. And that is the end of what I have prepared. So let's see if we have any. So someone wanted to know, will it jam up the system if we send to all? I'm not sure what that question is related to. In other words, sending out to all vendors, yes. So there should be a job aid available if you're talking about exempt procurements and the certain posting requirements that you have for that. You should look specifically at the job aid related to that. And someone said, can you clarify the list of exempt procurements that are posted in BidBuy? You know, that's not something that I was prepared to go in detail, and the last thing I want to do is give you some incomplete information, but I can schedule that for a future session, is a discussion of exempt procurements in BidBuy. But one place to look, if you do have any specific questions about exempt procurements, is look at the CPO notices related to exempt procurements. And then you can always follow that up with a question if you have a specific question about what's being posted and how. And so, okay, that is everything I have. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on hold and see if any other questions come in. Okay, that is all I have for this week, but we will see you again in a couple of weeks, and thank you very much.